So just to highlight, you know, a lot of people wondering what, on the net, has there been a slowdown? Has there been a decrease in settlement activity? I think it's safe to say that there is no settlement freeze of any kind being implemented in the West Bank, particularly in and around Jerusalem. And just to illustrate the point, the number of housing units that were tendered both before Annapolis and after Annapolis, these are just actual tenders, not the existing plans, of which there are many thousands more. Before Annapolis, in the 12 months before Annapolis, from November to November, 138 housing units were tendered in the entire West Bank, including East Jerusalem. In the 6 months since Annapolis, 847 units were tendered, the vast majority of these in the Jerusalem area, about 90% or so in and around East Jerusalem. A significant portion of them are in Har Homa alone. And we really, this same pattern we see over and over. If you take any indicator with regard to settlement activity, whether it's the number of tenders, the number of construction starts, the number of building permits, the number of sites on which there is current construction going on, building completions, any indicator, each and every one of them has increased, and increased substantially. Building permits, in the first 3 months before Annapolis, 114 building permits were issued in private construction, not including East Jerusalem. Those figures are not available. And in the following 3 months, almost 3 times more. Again, just private construction in the West Bank, not including the 14, 15 settlements inside, in and around East Jerusalem. Now, turning to the requirements with regard to Jerusalem, the Palestinian vision is that, of course, East Jerusalem has to be the capital of Palestine. The formula is straightforward. East Jerusalem is the capital of Palestine. West Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. Clearly, the issue of borders is related to Jerusalem, and we're also looking at the possibility of modifications to the 1967 line, just as we do elsewhere in the West Bank, in order to accommodate certain Israeli interests, but again, in a way that doesn't adversely impact our vital interests, and in Jerusalem those interests become much more acute. The 1967 line, a key principle is to ensure access to all groups, regardless of the situation with regard to sovereignty, to their holy sites. So Jewish holy sites, their religious freedom rights, their right to access those sites would be preserved, even if and when those areas come under Palestinian sovereignty. And of course, we would expect the same on the other side. Having said that, let me just point out that certain holy sites are, of course, more than holy sites, and are not subject to the swap. I think it's no revelation that we point out the area of the Haram in Jerusalem is not an area really that could be subject to a swap. But there may be some arrangements, either with regard to security or access, that might be agreed to. And lastly, there will need to be some sort of administrative arrangements between the two municipalities of Jerusalem. And of course, the exact details of that would need to be negotiated. How closely interlinked are they administratively or even politically, or delinked? That's, of course, issues that are subject to negotiation, but something that has to be addressed. Again, the many obstacles, ongoing settlement activity. Here you see a recent photo of construction in the Har Homa settlement, south of East Jerusalem, between Jerusalem and Bethlehem. And just to give you a sense of the frenetic pace of construction in Har Homa in particular, all of you, I'm sure, remember that in 2000, when they were negotiating, Har Homa did not exist except as a plan. There were no settlers there at that point. There were announcements and there were approvals, and there were tenders, and there was construction, but there were no actual settlers. Since then, there have been five or 6,000 Israeli settlers now live in this particular settlement. Just to give you a sense of the proportion of the focus that Israel is putting on Har Homa, of the approximately more than 4,800 or so current construction sites identified by the Israeli government, by the Ministry of Housing and Construction, in all areas of the West Bank, 41% of them are in the settlement of Har Homa alone. 41% of the housing units that are currently under construction or being marketed are in the settlement of Har Homa alone. There's massive, obviously, emphasis on this particular settlement, and that's for a very clear purpose, in order to complete that ring of settlements around East Jerusalem. And the more Palestinians negotiate with their Israeli counterparts, the more frenetic, ironically, the settlement construction pace goes. But of course, to make matters worse, it's not only the settlement activity. There are related kind of infrastructure activities in the most sensitive areas of Jerusalem, including new tunnels that are being built around the Haram. I'm sure all of you remember the 1996 tunnel that was opened right along here from near the Western Wall. There are two new tunnels. In addition to the fact that one is now being expanded, there are two new tunnels being built. A tunnel to connect the planned settlement area in Silwan, in which there are already about 50 or so settler families living, and there's a master plan, a detailed plan for building a full-blown settlement, which would, of course, ultimately displace those Palestinians who live there, to connect this new settlement with the Haram itself. So we're looking at not just a demographic issue and changing the reality on the ground, but a serious threat to the very heart of Jerusalem for Palestinians and the Arab and Muslim world much more broadly. And then, as Man pointed out, we have the ongoing closure of Jerusalem institutions, first and foremost being the Orient House, which, as everyone knows, is the PLO headquarters in Jerusalem, whereas Israel could have taken the simple act of letting the previous closure order for these institutions lapse. They decided to actually actively renew that closure order in February of this year, and all 10 institutions remain closed. Again, another sign of really a lack of good faith, and as well as a clue into what Israeli intentions are in Jerusalem. And of course, parallel with the settlement activity, you have the demographic measures that are being taken against Palestinians to de-Palestinianize Jerusalem, mainly in the form of revoking residency rights for Palestinians in Jerusalem, and the demolition of homes. We don't have exact numbers for pre and post Annapolis. Those figures haven't been published yet, but just to give you a sense, the number of home demolitions that took place just in East Jerusalem in all of 2007 was 208 homes, and in the 6 months since Annapolis, 130 homes have been demolished, again, just in East Jerusalem. And again, we don't have numbers for ID revocations, but if the trend is anything like what we saw from between 2005, in which there were 222 Palestinians that had their IDs revoked, and 2006, in which more than 7 times that number had their residency rights revoked, about more than 1,300, almost 1,400 Palestinians. If that's any sign of what we can expect to see when the numbers are published in 2007, then this is just yet more proof of these continuing trends to de-Palestinianize the city of Jerusalem and to artificially Judaize the city through settlement activity. And with that, I will turn over to my colleague Rami, who will talk about the other 3 core issues.